Beneath the canopy of towering trees, the forest surrounding Ethan Miller's grand estate hummed with life. Birds sang, leaves rustled, and the distant trickle of a stream painted an idyllic picture. Yet, in stark contrast, the mansion, a sprawling architectural masterpiece of gleaming marble and towering windows, stood as a monument of silence and solitude. It loomed at the forest's edge, breathtaking in its splendor but steeped in an air of melancholy, like a beautiful song played on a broken instrument. Inside, the quiet was deafening. Ethan Miller, a man whose name commanded respect in boardrooms and headlines alike, sat in his home office. His sharp suit and meticulously styled hair did little to hide the weight pressing on his shoulders. At 38, Ethan had everything society deemed necessary for happiness: wealth, influence, and a company he had built from the ashes of his father's legacy. Yet, the hollow ache in his chest was a constant reminder that something was missing. Every evening Ethan returned to the same empty house, its vast halls echoing with the absence of laughter or warmth. His only solace was his mother, Margaret, once a vibrant woman with a sharp wit and an infectious love of life. Now, advanced Alzheimer's had stolen her memories and her vitality, leaving her a shadow of herself. Margaret spent most of her days confined to a wheelchair, her gaze often fixed on a point far beyond the walls of her room, trapped in a world Ethan could no longer reach. "Mr. Miller," Claire, the housekeeper, interrupted softly, her voice carrying from the doorway. "Your mother asked for you earlier today." Ethan sighed and nodded. He was familiar with these moments, Margaret's fleeting questions about him, often slipping away before he could answer. Guilt clawed at him. The demands of running a company left little time to sit by her side, yet every missed opportunity weighed heavily on his heart. His days followed an unrelenting cycle, managing corporate crises, shouldering the expectations of investors, and returning to a home that felt more like a mausoleum for memories than a place of refuge. The vibrant forest just beyond his estate mocked him with its vitality, a stark contrast to the emotional barrenness he felt within. Sometimes he wondered if this was his fate, a life of success devoid of connection, of duty without joy. He dreamed of breaking free, of finding meaning beyond the cold grind of responsibility, but the path seemed unclear, like a foggy road with no end in sight. As the sun dipped behind the forest, casting long shadows across the mansion's manicured lawns, Ethan glanced toward his mother's room. The weight of her illness bore down on him like a stone tied to his soul. Deep down, he longed for change, for something, anything that could breathe life into the silent halls and his quiet despair. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and deep violet. Ethan Miller stood at the edge of his estate, the sprawling mansion behind him now shrouded in the dim glow of twilight. The air was cool, crisp, and inviting, a stark contrast to the suffocating stillness of his home. He slid his hands into his coat pockets, sighed deeply, and stepped into the forest. The trail wound through towering trees, their leaves whispering in the evening breeze. Birds called to one another, their songs mingling with the crunch of leaves beneath Ethan's polished shoes. For the first time that day, the weight on his chest seemed to ease. Here, amidst nature's quiet symphony, the endless demands of work and the pain of his mother's decline faded, if only briefly. Ethan walked without a destination, allowing the forest to guide him. He had always admired the resilience of this place, the way life thrived in the smallest cracks and corners. Yet tonight, even the forest's beauty couldn't fully lift the cloud hanging over him. His thoughts drifted back to Margaret, her vacant stare, her trembling hands. A sudden sound broke through his reverie, soft, muffled sobbing. Ethan froze, his ears straining. It was faint, almost swallowed by the rustling leaves, but unmistakably the sound of a child crying. His heart quickened as he scanned the trees, following the sound deeper into the forest. Beneath a sprawling oak, he spotted a small figure huddled against the roots. A girl, no older than 9 or 10, her knees drawn to her chest, her face buried in her arms. "Hey," Ethan called gently, kneeling a few feet away so as not to startle her. Are you all right?" The girl lifted her head, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the soft moonlight. Her large, frightened eyes met his. Her clothes, though clean, were threadbare, and her small frame seemed almost swallowed by the oversized coat she wore. I'm lost," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan felt a pang in his chest. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lily," she replied, brushing away her tears with the back of her hand. "All right, Lily. Do you know where you live? Maybe I can help you get home." She hesitated, her tiny hands clutching the fabric of her coat. "I don't have a real home. Just a little place I made. It's far, and I don't know how to get back." Ethan's stomach tightened. "You live by yourself?" She nodded, a flicker of pride crossing her face. "It's my cardboard house. I made it nice, but it's cold." For a moment, Ethan was speechless. The resilience in her voice contrasted sharply with her vulnerable state. "Lily, you can't stay out here tonight. It's too dangerous." She recoiled slightly, mistrust flashing in her eyes. "I don't know you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, understanding her fear. "That's fair, but I promise, I just want to help. I have a big house just over there." He pointed in the direction of the mansion. "You'll be warm, and we'll figure things out tomorrow." Lily looked at him for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, she reached out and took his hand, her small fingers trembling in his grasp. "Okay," she murmured. Ethan smiled gently. "You're safe with me, Lily. Let's go." As they walked back through the forest, the mansion's lights glowing in the distance, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this chance meeting was about to change his life forever. The massive iron gates creaked open as Ethan and Lily approached the mansion, its towering silhouette glowing softly under the moonlight. For a moment, Lily stopped in her tracks, her eyes wide with wonder. Is this your house?" she asked, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. Ethan smiled, a small flicker of amusement breaking through his usual stoic demeanor. "Yes. What do you think?" "It's like a castle," Lily whispered, her gaze darting from the arched windows to the intricate carvings on the grand doorway. "Are there knights inside too?" "No knights, but maybe a dragon or two," Ethan replied lightly as he pushed open the door. Inside, the mansion was vast and immaculate. Chandeliers hung like cascading diamonds, and the polished floors gleamed under soft lighting. Yet, to Ethan, it had always felt cold, a house built for display rather than comfort. For Lily, however, it was like stepping into a dream. She hesitated on the threshold, her small hand tightening around Ethan's. "I don't think I'm supposed to be here," she said quietly. "You belong here tonight," Ethan reassured her. "Come on." After ensuring Lily had a warm meal, Ethan led her down the hall to a quieter wing of the mansion. He stopped outside a room with a slightly ajar door. "This is my mother's room," he said. "She's not well, but I think she'd like to meet you." Lily peeked inside. Margaret sat in a plush armchair by the window, her figure frail but dignified. Her eyes were fixed on the garden beyond, as though lost in another time. Tentatively, Lily stepped inside. "Hi," she said softly, her small voice cutting through the quiet. Margaret didn't respond, her gaze unwavering. "She doesn't talk much," Ethan explained. Lily approached cautiously, her bare feet barely making a sound on the rug. "Your flowers are really pretty," she said, glancing toward the window. "I used to make little bouquets out of dandelions. They're not as fancy as yours, though." For a moment, Margaret's head shifted slightly, as if she'd caught the sound of Lily's voice. Encouraged, Lily continued talking, about flowers, the forest, and the cardboard house she had built. Though Margaret remained silent, Ethan noticed a faint softness in her expression, a subtle shift that felt like the first touch of spring after a long winter. When Ethan returned to the kitchen, Claire was waiting. Her arms were crossed, her usual stern expression darker than ever. "Mr. Miller," she began, her voice firm, You can't just bring strangers into the house, especially not a child. We don't know where she's been or what she's carrying. Your mother is already vulnerable." Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's a little girl, Claire, not a threat. She's also a stranger. You don't know her story, and you have enough responsibilities already." The tension between them was palpable, but Ethan's resolve was unshaken. "She has no one, Claire. For one night we can give her safety and warmth. That's non-negotiable." Claire sighed, her expression softening slightly. "I hope you know what you're doing." As the hours passed, Ethan found himself listening to the faint sound of Lily's laughter echoing down the halls. She was exploring, carefully, tentatively, but her curiosity brought life to corners of the mansion that had long felt lifeless. In her excitement, she'd marveled at the intricate wallpaper, peeked into forgotten rooms, and asked Ethan endless questions about the paintings on the walls. For the first time in years, he felt a warmth that extended beyond duty or obligation. The next morning, sunlight poured through the grand windows of the mansion, casting warm patterns on the polished floors. Lily wandered through the quiet halls, her small footsteps echoing in the vast space. She had never been in a place like this. Each room was filled with treasures, paintings of serene landscapes, bookshelves stretching to the ceiling, and intricate vases that seemed too delicate to touch. Her exploration led her to a room near the end of a long corridor. The door was slightly ajar, inviting her curiosity. Inside, the air was tinged with the scent of old wood and faint traces of lavender. A towering wardrobe dominated one side of the room, and on a small table near the window sat an open notebook, its pages filled with handwritten notes and lyrics. Drawn to it, Lily stepped closer, her fingers brushing the edges of the worn pages. The handwriting was elegant, yet shaky in places, as if written by someone fighting to preserve memories slipping away. She read the lyrics. "In your eyes, I find my light, a star that guides me through the night. My little one, so brave, so true. My heart beats endlessly for you." Her heart clenched as she realized these words were written for Ethan. The love and devotion etched into every line made her feel as if she were peeking into a secret corner of Margaret's soul. Beside the notebook rested a dusty guitar, its strings slightly frayed but still intact. Lily reached for it hesitantly, her fingers grazing the wood. Though worn, the instrument felt alive in her hands, as if it held stories waiting to be told. That evening, Lily approached Ethan. "Mr. Ethan," she began, her voice a mix of excitement and nervousness, "I found something. Your mom's songs. They're beautiful. Do you think maybe music could help her?" Ethan paused, the idea both touching and bittersweet. "Music was everything to her," he admitted. "She used to play all the time when I was little, but it's been years since she's touched an instrument." Lily's eyes lit up with determination. "Then I'll learn them," she declared. "Maybe if she hears the songs again, it'll remind her of who she is." Ethan studied her, moved by her resolve. "If anyone can reach her, it might be you, Lily," he said softly. Over the next few days, Lily devoted herself to the guitar. Though her fingers stumbled across the strings and her attempts at chords were clumsy at first, she persisted. She pored over Margaret's journal, practicing the songs late into the night. Her small hands ached, but each note she played carried a purpose. One afternoon, Lily decided to play a song for Margaret. She sat on the floor by Margaret's chair, strumming the guitar with a mixture of hope and nervous energy. Her voice, though soft, carried the melody with surprising clarity. But Margaret remained motionless, her eyes fixed on the window, her expression unchanging. "Did you like it?" Lily asked, her voice tinged with desperation. Margaret gave no response, and the silence felt heavier than ever. Lily clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. She wanted so badly to help, to bring some light back into Margaret's world, but nothing seemed to work. Still, she refused to give up. "She's in there," Lily whispered to herself that night, staring out the window of her room. "I just have to find the right way to reach her." Despite the setbacks, Lily's determination burned brighter than ever. Deep in her heart, she believed that music, the same music that once brought joy to Margaret's life, could break through the barriers of her illness. And Lily wasn't ready to stop trying. The evening descended quietly over the mansion, the warm glow of the setting sun casting long shadows across the room where Margaret sat, as motionless as ever. Lily sat on the floor nearby, the worn guitar resting on her lap. Her fingers hovered over the strings, hesitant but determined. Her mind wandered back to a melody she had heard days ago, Ethan humming softly while walking her to the dining room. The tune was tender, almost mournful, yet it carried a thread of hope woven into its notes. Lily remembered it clearly, feeling in her heart that this song might hold the key to breaking through Margaret's silence. Taking a deep breath, Lily positioned her fingers on the fretboard and began to play. At first, the notes came out uneven, her hands trembling with nerves, but as the melody unfolded, her confidence grew. The sound filled the room, soft yet powerful, and she began to sing. In your eyes I find my light, a star that guides me through the night. My little one, so brave, so true, my heart beats endlessly for you. The lyrics echoed with a gentle intensity, every word infused with Lily's longing to reach Margaret. Her voice, though small, carried an emotional weight far beyond her years. The atmosphere in the room seemed to shift. The golden light of the sunset mingled with the melody, creating a sense of stillness, as if the world outside had paused to listen. For a moment, nothing happened. Margaret remained still, her gaze fixed on the window. But then, something changed. A flicker, almost imperceptible. Her fingers twitched slightly against the armrest of her chair. Lily caught her breath, her heart pounding. "Mrs. Margaret?" she whispered, her voice cracking with hope. Margaret's head turned ever so slowly, her eyes meeting Lily's for the first time. There was a glimmer there, faint but undeniable, a light breaking through the fog of her illness. Then, to Lily's astonishment, Margaret's lips began to move. At first it was a faint hum, barely audible, but it grew stronger as she found the rhythm of the melody. In your eyes, I find my light. The words came softly, but they were unmistakable. Margaret was singing. At that exact moment, Ethan stepped into the mansion, exhausted from the day's work. As he walked down the hall, he froze. A sound drifted toward him. Familiar, impossibly familiar. It was his mother's voice. His feet carried him swiftly to the room, where he stopped in the doorway. The sight before him was nothing short of miraculous. Margaret singing softly, her frail hands trembling as she reached for Lily, who was smiling through her tears. "Mom," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. Margaret's gaze shifted to him. Her expression softened, and for the first time in years, recognition lit her face. "Ethan," she said, her voice fragile but clear. "You've grown into such a fine man." Ethan's tears came freely as he crossed the room and knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. He held her close, his heart overflowing with emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: grief, joy, and an overwhelming sense of love. Later that evening, Ethan sat alone in the study, the events of the day playing over and over in his mind. The sound of his mother's voice, fragile but alive, still echoed in his ears, a miracle he had long stopped hoping for. He leaned back in the leather chair, staring at the framed photographs on the wall. Most were of his parents, vibrant and full of life, a stark contrast to the silent halls he had grown used to. For the first time in years, the mansion felt different. It wasn't just the sound of Margaret's voice or the music that had filled the air. It was the presence of Lily. The little girl, with her boundless determination and innocent warmth, had managed to breathe life into a house that had been frozen in grief and routine. Ethan thought about how she had spent days practicing Margaret's songs, refusing to give up even when her efforts seemed fruitless. Lily's resilience reminded him of something he had lost, the ability to fight for joy, for connection, for something bigger than himself. It hit him then, with the force of clarity. His life had been incomplete. Despite his success, his wealth, and the company he had tirelessly built, he had been living without purpose. And now, the answer was right in front of him. Lily. The next morning, Ethan found Lily sitting in the garden, her small frame dwarfed by the vastness of the manicured hedges and sprawling flower beds. She was strumming the guitar softly, humming a tune that had become familiar in the household. Ethan approached quietly, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure how to put his feelings into words, but he knew he had to try. "Lily," he began, his voice steady but gentle. She looked up at him, her eyes bright and curious. "Good morning, Mr. Ethan." Ethan smiled, pulling up a chair beside her. "You've changed this house," he said after a moment, his gaze fixed on the flowers swaying in the breeze. "You've changed me, and I want to thank you for that." Lily blinked, uncertain where the conversation was going. "I just wanted to help," she said softly. "You've done more than help," Ethan continued. He turned to face her, his expression earnest. "Lily, I've been thinking a lot about this. You deserve a family, a home where you feel safe and loved, and I would be honored if you let me be that for you." Her eyes widened, her hands frozen on the guitar strings. "What do you mean?" "I want to adopt you, Lily," Ethan said, his voice filled with conviction. "I want you to stay here, not just for now, but forever. You'd have a home, a family. You'd never have to feel alone again." Lily's face crumpled as tears filled her eyes. "You mean it?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan nodded, his own eyes shining. "I mean it, Lily. You've already become a part of this family. Let's make it official." With a sob of joy, Lily launched herself into his arms, holding him tightly as if afraid he might disappear. "I've never had a real dad," she said through her tears. "But if it's you, I think I'd really like that." Ethan held her close, the weight of his decision lifting something in his soul. In that moment, he knew his life had finally found its purpose. The mansion, once a symbol of loneliness, was now a home filled with love, hope, and a promise of new beginnings. The days that followed Lily's adoption marked the beginning of a transformation within the mansion. What had once been a cold, hollow space now resonated with life. Laughter echoed through the grand halls, accompanied by the soft strumming of Lily's guitar and her playful, often off-key singing. The once stern Claire, initially skeptical of Lily's presence, found herself enchanted by the girl's unrelenting energy and wide-eyed curiosity. At first, Claire maintained her usual rigid demeanor, correcting Lily's manners and setting clear boundaries. But as days turned into weeks, Claire softened. One morning, Lily peeked into the kitchen, where Claire was meticulously arranging a tray of tea. "Can I help?" Lily asked, her voice hopeful. Claire raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a game, young lady. These cups are older than both of us combined." "I'll be careful," Lily promised, her hands clasped together earnestly. With a sigh of mock exasperation, Claire relented. "Fine. But if you break anything, you're polishing silver for a month." As the two worked side by side, Claire couldn't suppress a smile. The girl's chatter filled the quiet kitchen with warmth, a reminder of the joy she hadn't realized she missed. The music sessions became a daily ritual. Each afternoon, Lily brought the old guitar to Margaret's room, settling by her side and playing the songs she had carefully practiced. While Margaret often remained silent, there were moments, brief but profound, when her eyes would clear and her lips would part in a faint smile. One evening, as Lily played a particularly soothing melody, Margaret reached out, her frail hand resting on Lily's. "That's beautiful," she murmured, her voice soft but unmistakable. Ethan, standing quietly in the doorway, felt a lump rise in his throat. He stepped into the room, watching as his mother gently hummed along to the tune, her expression one of serene contentment. These fleeting moments of clarity, though rare, became cherished treasures for the family. Each one reminded Ethan of the vibrant woman Margaret had once been, and filled him with gratitude for the new life Lily had brought into their home. For Ethan, life took on a new rhythm. His days, once dominated by endless meetings and corporate demands, now had a balance he hadn't thought possible. Mornings began with the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through the halls as she raced down to breakfast. Evenings were spent together in the living room, sharing stories, playing music, or simply sitting in comfortable silence. At work, Ethan's colleagues noticed a change. The man who had once been all business now spoke with a lighter tone, occasionally slipping in anecdotes about his new daughter. His renewed energy brought fresh ideas and a sense of optimism to the company, a reflection of the happiness he felt at home. One weekend, Ethan decided to take a rare day off, something he hadn't done in years. He and Lily spent the morning wandering through the forest that bordered the estate, their laughter mingling with the rustling leaves. Lily paused to collect wildflowers, weaving them into a crown that she proudly placed on Ethan's head. "You look like a forest king," she declared, giggling. Ethan chuckled, adjusting the crown. "And you're my princess," he said, his voice filled with warmth. For the first time in years, Ethan felt whole. The void that had once consumed him was gone, replaced by the simple, profound joy of family. The day of the adoption ceremony arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze, as though the world itself was celebrating the occasion. The mansion, once a place of quiet isolation, was now alive with laughter and the warmth of friends and well-wishers. Ethan stood at the center of the room, his usual composed demeanor softened by a visible sense of pride and joy. Lily entered the room wearing a simple white dress, her face glowing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She clutched the old guitar close to her chest, a gift from Ethan, freshly restored as a symbol of their journey together. As the judge read the final declaration, officially naming Lily as Ethan's daughter, the room erupted into applause. Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she looked at Ethan, who knelt down to her level. "You're not just my daughter now, Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're my family." "And you're my dad," Lily whispered, throwing her arms around him. The room grew quiet for a moment as the embrace encapsulated the journey they had shared, from loss and loneliness to love and belonging. Later that evening, as the guests mingled, Lily found a quiet corner to reflect. She gazed out at the forest, the place where her story had begun. Just months ago, she had been lost and afraid, living in a cardboard shelter with little hope for the future. Now she had a home, a family, and a life filled with possibilities. The mansion itself had transformed, not through wealth or grandeur, but through the power of love and determination. Margaret's music had bridged the gap between past and present, healing old wounds and forging new connections. Ethan's choice to open his heart had brought light into all their lives, proving that family is not just about blood, but about the bonds we choose to nurture. Do you feel the warmth and inspiration in this story? If you were in Ethan's shoes, would you have made the same choices? Or if you were Lily, what would it feel like to find a family after so much hardship? Take a moment to reflect and share your thoughts. What part of the story moved you the most? Your feedback is invaluable. It helps us improve and create even more heartfelt tales to share with you. If you enjoyed The Melody of Hope, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll be the first to hear many more stories of love, resilience, and unexpected connections. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. We wish you a day filled with joy, inspiration, and good fortune. See you in the next story.